Welcome to F1 Blogs. This is your spot for getting into what's really happening in Formula One.
Yeah, we cut through the noise, skip the endless feed.
Exactly. We dive deep into what actually matters from the track, the paddock, everything. So today we're digging into a really interesting discussion we came across. It covered quite a bit.
It did. McLaren's rear tires, that whole mystery.
Yeah, and the politics between McLaren and Red Bull, which never seems to stop.
Always simmering, isn't it? And then there was talk about Carlos Sainz Sr. potentially running for FIA president.
Right. That was a bit of a surprise. Plus, just a general look at how some teams and drivers are stacking up.
So our mission basically is to pull out the key bits from that conversation for you.
Give you a clear picture of these big F1 storylines, what they could mean going forward. Expect some interesting details.
Definitely a fresh take on things.
Okay, let's get into it. First up, this McLaren rear tire thing. The buzz about them keeping the rears cooler than everyone else.
Yeah, and it's causing quite a stir, as you expect. Rival teams are definitely suspicious.
Naturally. When someone finds an edge, the first reaction is often, are they bending the rules?
Exactly. We heard those initial kind of wild theories. Liquid cooling, degrading carbon fiber drums.
Oh, pretty much dismissed as nonsense, right?
Yeah, quickly shot down. It seems the real answer is, well, less cloak and dagger, but maybe more impressive engineering-wise.
Like lots of small, clever things adding up.
That's what the analysis points to. Loads of incremental gains from smart decisions all coming together. Not one silver bullet.
But what's the core benefit they're getting from these combined tweaks? Is it purely heat management?
That seems to be a huge part of it. The evidence suggests their rear brake drums run cooler.
Okay.
And cooler brakes mean cooler tires. Less sliding, less overheating, better performance for longer. It's like a virtuous circle.
Right, you maintain grip, you don't cook the tires halfway through a stint.
Precisely. And there were those thermal images from Japan, weren't there, after the pit stops?
Yeah, I saw those. McLaren's drums looked noticeably cooler.
And then the FIA did their checks after Miami.
And no word of any problems.
Nothing official.
Yeah.
Which strongly suggests that McLaren are operating within the rules. They seem confident.
Okay, so if it's legal cleverness, how does this play out strategically? It seems like their advantage gets bigger in the heat.
That's the fascinating observation, yeah. As temperatures climb, managing tires gets trickier for everyone.
So if McLaren just have a better baseline system for cooling,
their advantage is magnified. Exactly. And, this isn't completely new for them either.
Oh.
Apparently, even back in 2023, think Imola, Spain, they showed signs of stronger tire management towards the end of stints.
So it's been a focus area.
Seems like it. Andrea Seidel mentioned it was something they specifically targeted over the winter development, tweaking the concept slightly.
Right, a targeted evolution, not a revolution.
And it's not just the brakes. Think about the knock-on effects. If you need less brake cooling,
you can improve the aerodynamics around that area, run the car more efficiently.
Spot on. Plus, suspension tweaks for ride height stability, driver technique. It's a whole package. Holistic engineering.
Okay, so McLaren finds this performance edge through clever engineering. And inevitably, that seems to stir the political pot, especially with Red Bull.
Oh, definitely. That rivalry has quite a history, doesn't it? There's always been a bit of, let's say, needle between them.
You can say that again. Flexi wings last year, starting in Miami.
Mini DRS talks, Red Bull's front bib adjuster thing.
The water in the tires stuff in Brazil. That was classic.
It was. And Zach Brown's little water bottle moment in Miami this year.
Huh? Yeah, that wasn't subtle, was it? A direct callback.
Not at all. It really feels like Red Bull is maybe looking for external reasons for McLaren closing the gap.
Rather than just admitting McLaren have done a good job. Or maybe looking at their own situation.
Well, that's the underlying question, isn't it? Is this just standard F1 gamesmanship trying to unsettle a rival, which happens all the time?
Yeah.
Or does it hint that maybe things aren't perfect within Red Bull? You hear whispers about development maybe plateauing slightly, key people leaving, like Newey, obviously.
That theory about Red Bull losing something on brake steer around the same time McLaren surged last year, it's intriguing, even if unproven.
It adds fuel to that narrative, yeah. Brake steer, just helping the car stay stable under braking if they lost an edge there.
It would be felt. It's interesting because Red Bull were always the masters of exploiting those gray areas, weren't they?
They really were. Experts at finding clever interpretations, being not illegal.
And now maybe McLaren, perhaps helped by someone like Rob Marshall coming over from Red Bull,
has maybe taken on that mantle a bit. It's possible. Marshall certainly knows how Red Bull operated.
So what's next in this saga? Technical directive on front wings for Spain.
That could easily be the next flashpoint. Keep an eye on that one.
Okay, let's shift focus away from the track politics for a moment. Big news potentially brewing at the FIA. Carlos Sainz Sr. for president.
Yeah, that certainly caught people's attention. Announcing you're considering it publicly is, well, it's not the usual way these things happen.
You normally expect more groundwork laid first, right? Lining up support.
Exactly. And the key thing, apparently, for anyone wanting to challenge Mohammed bin Sulayem is they really need a single, unified opposition candidate.
To avoid splitting the vote amongst those who want change. Makes sense.
Otherwise, the incumbent has a huge advantage.
Sainz himself, though, he has credentials, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He's smart, knows motorsport inside out, interested in road safety, politically aware. He ticks a lot of boxes personally.
But suitability isn't enough in FIA politics.
Not even close. It's about building alliances, getting the votes from the member clubs. That's a massive, massive undertaking, especially for someone seen as maybe more of an outsider.
And then there's the elephant in the room, his son.
The potential conflict of interest, yeah. If Sainz Sr. became FIA president while Sainz Jr. is racing in F1.
Even if he promises to recuse himself from anything involving his son, which he has said he would.
The perception is still difficult, isn't it? Optics matter hugely. Any close call, any decision, people will question it.
It's a fair point, like the discussion around Zach Brown's motorsport network role. Perception is key.
Although it was pointed out that the FIA already has senior figures with ties to motorsport programs like Malcolm Wilson and the Ford Rally Connection.
True, so it's not entirely without precedent.
But maybe the direct father-son link with a current F1 driver feels different, more immediate.
Yeah, probably. So overall, a tough path for Sainz Sr. if he does decide to go for it. Incumbents are hard to beat.
Very hard. They have the existing structures, the relationships. It's an uphill battle.
Right, let's swing back to performance on track. Teams, drivers. Let's start with Yuki Tsunoda at RB. How's he viewed?
Well, the general feeling seems to be removing Perez from the main Red Bull seat was probably the right call.
Okay.
But Tsunoda hasn't definitively proven he's the clear upgrade they might have hoped for yet.
Performance-wise, where's he landing?
Often in that sort of 8th to 10th bracket. Makes Q3 sometimes, which is good, but there's this slight pattern emerging. Looks really strong in practice, early qualifying, then maybe doesn't quite nail that final Q3 lap when it really counts.
Interesting. Does that say something about the car? Maybe how tricky the Red Bull is on the absolute limit for anyone not named Max Verstappen.
It could well do. It echoes some of what Perez himself was saying last year about how demanding that car is. So, yeah, Yuki needs to find that consistency at the sharp end. Time will tell.
Okay, how about Aston Martin? They seem a bit stuck.
Trapped was the word used, and it feels about right. They're caught between wanting to go all in on 2026.
Which means maybe not spending big on this year's car.
Exactly. And their recent history with in-season upgrades hasn't been great, has it?
No, they've faded rather than improved sometimes.
Right. So the new boss, Andy Cowell, seems quite cautious. Wants to understand why past upgrades didn't work, get the processes right before throwing parts at the car.
So a season of consolidation, maybe grabbing points when things get messy.
Looks that way. Battling in the midfield, hoping for chaotic races.
And Alonso's future there. It's all pinned on 2026 and Newey, isn't it?
Pretty much. The hope is Newey delivers a magic bullet for the new regs. 2025 feels like it'll be mostly about gathering data for 26, probably not huge development on the current car.
Apart from mandated things like the front wing changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Williams next. They looked pretty good in Miami. Was that track specific?
It seems Miami suited them well. Simpler corners, long straights played to their strengths. They're definitely seen as a midfield leader now, which is great progress.
But maybe not quite challenging Mercedes or Ferrari on pure race pace week in, week out?
Probably not consistently, no. A podium on merit feels like a stretch this year. Maybe a lucky one if a race goes wild or in a sprint.
And like Aston, their big focus is already shifting to 2026.
Seems to be the case for many teams in that part of the grid. It's such a huge regulation change.
Now, the driver's there, Albon, and now Sainz Jr. How's that dynamic playing out?
Really interesting, actually. The suggestion is that Sainz arriving has pushed Albon again. He's back to that best version of himself we saw before.
And Sainz. Moving to the midfield hasn't hurt his stock.
Not at all. He's maintained his reputation. You could even argue Ferrari maybe missing him a bit makes him look even better.
So they're pretty evenly matched now after Sainz settled in.
Yeah, sounds like it's become quite nip and tuck between them performance-wise. Good benchmark for both.
Okay, nearly there. George Russell at Mercedes, getting praise from Toto Wolff?
Yeah, Toto talking him up as potentially a top driver on the grid.
But the contract isn't signed yet.
That seems to be the sticking point. Why the delay? Maybe Mercedes are just keeping their options open, seeing what happens elsewhere in the driver market.
You mean the Verstappen situation?
That's the big unknown, isn't it? Plus, maybe there's an element of keeping Russell sharp, you know? He started the season well, contract's up. Keep him pushing.
And then there's the Kimi Antonelli factor, the junior driver everyone's talking about.
Exactly. That buzz naturally creates pressure and adds another layer to Mercedes' decision-making process regarding Russell's future.
Right. One last quick thing, the virtual safety car rules. How much slower are they actually going?
It's roughly 30% slower than a normal quick lap, not quite the 40% sometimes mentioned.
And they manage that with a delta time on the dashboard.
Yeah, they have to stay above a certain time delta in each marshalling mini-sector. Get it wrong, and you get a penalty.
Like Albon in Miami recently.
Yep. Usually a 5-second time penalty, but it can be more severe. Drivers have to juggle staying legal on the delta while also thinking about track position for when it goes green again.
Tricky balance.
Definitely.
Okay, so that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. A lot covered there. McLaren's engineering, the Red Bull politics.
The FIA presidency questions, team dynamics, driver battles, plenty going on.
So much to keep track of. What really stands out to you from all this? What's the most intriguing part for the rest of the season?
For me, it's probably still that McLaren performance curve and how Red Bull responds, both technically and politically. That feels central right now.
Yeah, I agree. That battle seems key. And what about you listening? What grabs your attention most? Is it the McLaren tire tech? SAINZ Senior's potential FIA bid, maybe Aston's recovery hopes, or Williams' progress?
We'd genuinely love to hear what you think.
Head over to the comments section here on the F1 Blogs channel. Let us know your thoughts, your predictions. Join the conversation.
It really feels like this 2024 season is delivering storylines everywhere you look. On track, off track, engineering, politics, personalities.
Absolutely. And these things we've discussed today, they're not static. They'll keep evolving. McLaren's pace, the Red Bull dynamic, the FIA situation, the midfield fight, it's all going to develop.
Exciting times ahead.
Definitely. And if you want to stay right on top of all of it, get the latest F1 news, more in-depth analysis like this.
Make sure you subscribe to F1 Blogs.
Yep. Hit that subscribe button right here on the channel. We'll have more deep dives coming your way throughout the season. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.